we know best, and government closest to the people works best. Our state, we know what the needs of our state are, and we're going to represent the folks here, and we don't need the EPA particularly eroding the rights of our citizens, holding our businesses hostage so that they can't do the things that they want to do, things that we're trying to do to grow the economy in North Carolina. And we've done it very well, as all of the polls show and as all of the statistics show. Job creation here is very good, one of the best places to do business, but we still have a lot of things that we could do if the government would just get out of our way and let us do what's best for our citizens.
Wondrously, our founding fathers put a mechanism in the Constitution in Article 5, the amendment process. Either Congress can propose amendments, or very wisely, the states themselves can propose amendments and do an end run around an intractable or obtuse federal government to make changes to really preserve the nation.
I support the Convention of States project because it is the constitutional remedy for the concerns that we see in our country. I think it's what the founders put in place for us to be able to properly constrain the federal government and keep it within its role. We know that the states created the federal government, and they knew it was important that the states maintain the opportunity that they can amend the Constitution or propose amendments to the Constitution just as Congress can every day. And I think we live in a time and an age where we see the skyrocketing national debt, we see the overreach of the federal government in so many aspects of our lives, and it's time for the citizens and the states to stand up and say enough is enough and exercise our constitutional duty and our constitutional role to keep the federal government in check.
And it's so reflective today that when power gets so concentrated in one area, how people will not let go of that power. And the special interests around that will not let them. They love the status quo. And they saw that the convention would be the greatest way to return the power back to the people. Because that's where the power and all the rights come from. Not to the government, to the people, but from the people back to the government. And, you know, for them to have the foresight, knowing that one day our system will be so stagnant, so status quo, that we would have to use this.
You know, for me personally, I don't see any other options. I don't see the problem self-correcting. I don't see the problem correcting by what party might be in power, because there's so much influence that not even we are aware of that goes on in Washington, D.C. It's got to come from outside. If anything is going, it can't be, they're not going to self-regulate, and so no matter who's in power, no matter who's in the White House or who's leading the Congress or who's leading the Senate, you can just look and see how long it's been since they did anything to self-regulate themselves. It's been a long time, and it really had absolutely nothing to do with the situation that our nation finds itself in. So if we're going to preserve this nation, we have to do something, and this is the best option that we have.
I really did it for my children, my grandchildren, and my great-grandchildren. Federal budget's approaching $20 trillion. Something's got to be done. In the Convention of States, the founders knew that government would get too big for its britches, and it has, and we need some common sense. And the current politicians up there, whether they be Republican or Democrat, I believe are conflicted and want to stay in office, and that's why I support the Convention of States with a balanced budget, with judges and politicians having term limits.
There's the reality of where legislators, state legislators live, which is in more of the real world than people in Washington, D.C., whom I have a respect and regard for. We have many good, patriotic men and women in D.C., but they're working against a built-in, deep state, entrenched, just overweight, all-powerful, it seems, federal government that has abandoned its constitutional rails and safeguards and is now extending itself into every area of our life. The founders foresaw that, and they put in place the amendment process via the states. I think it's a good, safe thing to do. 34 states have to agree to call, and then you have to have 38 states to say, we like this amendment or that amendment. And the unique thing about the Convention of States project is that all of the amendments that will come from this convention will be designed to reduce the power and scope of the federal government.
We've had Republicans control Washington, we've had Democrats control Washington. It's not just a partisan problem, it's not just a matter of, you know, one more election to get the right people there and this type thing. It truly is going to have to come from the states. And I think the founders recognize that. I think that's why they unanimously determined that Article 5 provision of the Constitution was absolutely necessary, that the states do exercise our constitutional duty and our constitutional role. And so I think this is the right way. I think it's the way that the founders prescribed. And so I'm very comfortable with exercising our duty.
And we can address the issues that are important to the American people. And I think it's time that we did that. I think it's past time for us to do that. States, they have eroded everything that we do, particularly in North Carolina, as you know.
We have to do it. We look at what has happened to our federal government in the last 30, 40 years. The amount of debt has increased. The policies that have come out there, out of Washington, you know, they're not in touch with the main street. They're not in touch with the country road. And I think that's something that is imperative for North Carolina to join on to the convention and become one of the leaders of this movement.
We got generations coming after us that are going to depend on us and say, why didn't you do something? The problem is very evident. Why didn't you do something to stop this? You had a tool to do something with, and you were didn't even have the courage to stand up and use it. And you know, to me, this is something that will work. I don't know how far it'll go, but I know that the closer we get to making this happen, the stronger message it's going to be sending to those who represent us in our nation's capital.
You know, my message to my colleagues is that I know that they share my frustration, that they see the usurping of authority from the states into the federal government. And it's something that we deal with and our citizens deal with every day, whether it's an overreaching judiciary or whether it's simply an overreaching, you know, federal government that is usurping authority that was reserved for the citizens and for their states. And again, I would just urge my colleagues to, you know, we swore to uphold the Constitution of our state and of the United States. And this is the Constitution of the United States. We have a constitutional duty to keep the federal government in check. And so I would just strongly urge my colleagues to please, let's get on board and let's join the states that have already accomplished this and encourage our other states to do so. Because truly, I have not heard of a better solution. I don't think there is a better solution. I don't think there is a peaceful solution that people talk about that will address the problems that need to be addressed. And so I just implore my colleagues to please get on board and let's do this.
Safeguards in place and the high bar of 38 states to get anything done, whether you agree with it or not, is going to be very difficult for any group. I think there's enough patriotism left in America, especially within the states, that we can get this job done. One friend asked me, you know, why now? Is this the time for it? Why not? We should wait. We should have another election cycle. We might get more people, better people elected, so we should wait. Now is not the time. But my answer is the time was 10 years ago. Every day that passes, we are living on borrowed money, we're living on borrowed time, we're living on borrowed character, and it's time to make an investment in the future for my children, my future grandchildren, your future grandchildren, to make sure we leave for them something better than we found. And I think the Convention of States, and many people are beginning to see this is the only way to correct Washington. It's not from within. Too many senators and congressmen who have served say, we're not going to do it from within. They've tried. It's now time for the states to be the adults in the room and corral the federal government, put it back within its constitutional boundaries.
Sign the petition at cosaction.com and get as many of your friends and family to do the same. With your full address, your state legislators will know that you really are their constituents in their district. Our success depends on you, so we're inviting you to be part of history. Let's invoke the constitutional solution that's as big as the problem.